anything about him. Even when I met him, he was a dark-skinned, Hindu-type person. But I didn't know him. And it was only after this that I began to investigate, and discovered that he had been a master from India, who is dark-skinned, and who, after much study, became a master. And it's said that when he disincarnated, he went to the intraterrestrial world. And yes, in some of my dreams I perceived that he was in a separate world, not on the earth we move on. But he was there, and he had come out to protect us. 3 times I dreamed of Enoch. Then, I also perceived Enoch. It was during the time we were studying things about Enoch. He appeared to me in 3 different dreams. Within a span of about 3 months. All of this around 2002. It was already the time when the meditations with Lionel had ended. And there was talk of the keys of Enoch. But still, I was completely unaware of Enoch, his books, and all that. The truth is, that the dream came to me. Yes, I don't quite remember what he informed me and told me, but yes, it was 3 times. And then, the curious thing about this was that in the daily life I was leading, I met a person named Enoch. He was a doctor by that name. I remember that at the clinic where I worked, I was in an office, and in the office on the right, was a doctor named Enoch. And as if that weren't enough, a doctor named Balthazar had arrived in the office on the left. Enoch wanted me to put something back together in my life. That was what everything he told me on those 3 occasions revolved around. Hirohito. It was long before that I dreamed about Hirohito. My children were still young. I dreamed about him. This dream began when I was inside a very large house, heading toward the rooftop. And there, I was lying on a wall. I was looking at the sky and some spaceships were passing by. Some going this way, others that way. They were flying saucers going from one place to another. Then I said, I'm going to leave here now. Americo Living Trail, 344, 344. And when I did, that's when I woke up. I immediately wanted to go to the bathroom. All of this was already here in reality. Then, I had trouble sleeping again. As soon as I did, I resumed the same dream, and went back to the rooftop. Then they told me, you're back again. And when I went down from the roof into the house, I saw it was a house with many rooms. Some were like healing rooms, where they were actually performing healings. But they were very different healings from what we know. I mean, they were practicing something there, that we on Earth don't practice. Then I started saying a name, Hirohito, Hirohito, Hirohito. And then I woke up. Once awake, I immediately thought to myself, what is Hirohito? It wasn't even that I thought, who is Hirohito, but, what is Hirohito? Only a while later did I hear this name mentioned on the news, Hirohito. And I was surprised to discover that this name actually exists. I started looking it up, and saw it referred to a Japanese emperor who was there during the World War. I don't know if it was the first or the second. I don't remember right now. He was very young, and had his father. Later, I learned that there had been UFO involvement in World War II and all that. So Hirohito was involved, though not directly, in the nuclear bomb, and he had to make a very important decision. 3. The Town of Glory and my childhood town of La Gloria. Another interesting fact is that there's a town near Pero, Veracruz. They named it La Gloria. And to enter this town, we turn left off the highway, at the Alchachica Lagoon. The town is on the right, and it was named La Gloria, because a general from the Mexican Revolution arrived there after they had one. When he was in that town, he said, I'm in heaven. Because they treated him wonderfully. With good food and the friendly nature of the people. Which gave everything a mystical touch. At that time, my father was young. My father isn't from the glory days, but he went to live there. Because his father, that is, my grandfather, was with the general who was the one who gave the town its name La Gloria. My mother wasn't born there either, but she too moved to the town from a very young age, along with her family. My mother was actually young, because she says they carried her on their backs, with a little basket on their shoulders, and she was tucked into that basket. They named my mother Maria, without an accent, and they called her Maria. But later, since the name Maria was more common, they changed the accent and simply called her Maria. As her childhood progressed, and since she was a fast-running girl, they named her Maya, comparing her to a certain fast-flying firefly called Mates. So, from a young age, they called my mother Maya. Maya. Notes on my childhood. Since I was little, I've always been drawn to the mysterious, to the afterlife. I didn't really know the world. The world was my brother's and the little room where we lived. We didn't know television, radio, or anything. So, whatever happened in that room, that was the world. Whether I was happy, or cried about something there, that was all there was to it. Because I didn't know the world. And I didn't want it either, because when you don't know something, you don't want it. So, if they gave me coffee, I didn't want the milk. They did give me milk, which was good, because I didn't know chocolate. I mean, along those lines. Since I didn't know the car, I wasn't unhappy, because we didn't have one. That's why my life was simple and plain. Because I didn't know many things. But I was a little girl, who wasn't afraid of things. Not at all. From what I remember, I must have been 4 or 5 years old, and I lived in this little rented room. Located on Zaragoza Avenue and 1st or 3rd St. Point Riet, I don't remember exactly, it was 3rd St. Point Riet, in the Gomez Farias neighborhood. Americo Living Trail, 345. I remember the bathroom had no light, meaning I couldn't even reach it. The thing is, I'd go into the bathroom, and spend half an hour there, completely in the dark. My mom would come looking for me, because I'd been so late, saying, "You've been so long, what are you doing?" She was worried. But then, my mom had to drop my brother off at elementary school, and she'd say to me, "I have to drop your brother off at school, so I'll go, and she came right back for you." And he took me to kindergarten. That's why I think I must have been about 5 years old. It was on one of those trips that, as always, I sat there on the bed, waiting for her to return. Only on one occasion, I had a vision of a very beautiful woman in her blue cloak. And I saw her standing in front of me. I mean, she could reach my little face, because I was sitting in my bed. Meanwhile, I saw that woman with her blue cloak covering her head, her shoulders, and down to her body. I remember that she approached me, as if she were hugging me, or as if her face was close to mine. And she whispered something in my ear. That's what I remember from that experience. But it stayed vivid in my memory, because her cloak was sky blue. Later, I associated her with the Virgin Mary, not with the Virgin of Guadalupe, whose attire is different. In my childhood mind, I knew she was a being, and that was it. Later, as an adult, I was surprised at how, at that age, I could think she was the Virgin. I'd never seen the place, nor do I remember anyone telling me it was the Virgin Mary. I've never been able to remember what she whispered in my ear. My friend from high school. Another memory I have, is from when I was in high school, and I met a young man who was studying there, in my group. He was also very restless, like me. Then, he told me he'd had an experience. I asked him what experience. And he confessed that he saw beings who came, that is, who weren't from this world. But they came here. He even saw those beings in person. He even said that there were people who were taken away, and they could leave someone who seemed to be the person, but was no longer the person. Then, he told me certain things. But since I didn't know, I just listened and listened. And one day I invited him to go to the place where my parents grew up. The town of Glory. I encouraged him because, for me, it's a mystical place. And as soon as you arrive, along the highway, you pass by a place called Los Derrumbedos, the collapsed mountains. They have a particular vibration. They are mountains like limestone, but they have a mysterious aspect. I didn't know what it was, but when you drive by, you feel it. Although not everyone perceives it that way. And continuing along the road to the right, you enter the highway that takes you to Gloria in 20 or 30 minutes. By the way, the Old Chichica Lagoon was studied by a journalist named Pedro Ferraz, now deceased. That visit I made with my friend happened around 1972. And I mentioned to him about the journalist, who was interested in this lagoon. In the center of this lagoon, there's a zone of silence. Also, many divers went in to explore it, and couldn't find the bottom. All of this is what makes it mysterious. On the way to the town of La Gloria, you come across 2 more lagoons. One is called Quechulac. It's sunken, because these aren't lagoons that are at ground level, but rather sunken. Alchichika is also sunken. Moving a little further toward La Gloria, we find another lagoon called Las Minas. This one is behind us, and you can get to the shore without having to go down. There's another one in the town of Atisca. To reach that lagoon, you first see the hill, and as you move forward, you look down, and there's the lagoon. So there are actually about 4 lagoons in a very short area. All of this gives the place a mystical touch. Add to that the fact that at the entrance to the town of La Gloria, there's an old hacienda, which no longer functions as such. And if you go to the town itself, you'll see that it's at the foot of the mountain, and up above, there are many large trees and a spring. This whole place, which I loved, was what I showed to my high school friend. And when he was there, he told me he felt a very different vibe. We immediately sat talking on some rocks. It was then that he said to me, "Have you noticed how it becomes like silence? You can no longer hear the wind or the rustling of the leaves, nor the birds." So I sort of paid attention and added, "That's true. It all got like this, calmed down. And after a while, everything returned to normal. The trees, the leaves, the noise, the birds, everything." So my friend said, "This place really has something." Americo Living Trail, 346, 346. And yes, indeed, because the inhabitants there, ever since their grandparents, always saw lights bordering the mountain. Because there are other mountains, but it was on this mountain, where they saw red lights. They always saw them. Plus, these locals have their superstitions. That's why they said these red lights were witches. That's what they called the lights that traveled from one hill to another. The same residents tell of a time on June 24th, the day of San Juan, at the Alchichica Lagoon, the one located at the edge of the highway leading to Perote. There, a woman would appear emerging from the center of the lagoon. And then, she would disappear. The tarot reader and my future husband. There are many more experiences I could share related to all this. I remember one from 1985. This one involved a friend who invited us to dinner at her house, and she also invited another person who knows how to read tarot cards. My friend asked us if we wanted her to read our tarot cards. At the time, I was still single, free. There was a doctor who was hanging around me, and was hanging around. He also attended that meal. The tarot card reader asked us if we wanted her to read our cards. So, of those of us who were there, one by one she went into a bedroom, and there she read our tarot cards. And when it was my turn, I went in, and she said, "Here in this reading, it tells me that you're going to be with someone." She said several things, but one of them was, "You're going to be with someone who has 4 children." She argued, "You're going to be with someone, or you're going to get married," something like that. But if I recall correctly, it was during the first interview that she assured me there was someone interested in me. I was going to do a small business with that person, and things were going to go very well for me. She said other things, but this was what caught my attention the most, because there was a suitor, and I thought the fortune teller was referring to him, but that wasn't the case. There was another one who was also after me, and it turns out that what she predicted came true with him, because with him, as a game, we started a small business, renting movies. Time passed, and we went out to another meal with the same friend. By then, I already had my 2 children. I'd already gotten married to my children's father, who was a doctor. And yet the fortune teller told me, "You're going to be fine with someone who has 4 children. At the time, I thought it was because he already had 2 children, and I had 2 children as well. So that made 4 children. For the time being, I was happy with that relationship, believing there was indeed a future with my children's father. But time passed, and it turned out there wasn't anything more fulfilling in our union. Until the time came when we had to act on things, like our lifestyle and all that. Until we finally had to separate. It was at that moment that I met another person, referring to Americo, who became interested in me, and we both wanted to have a relationship. But I didn't know about his life, until I was surprised to find out that this person had 4 children. And that's the person I married. That's why I had to admit that this was what the tarot reader had really told me at that time. This is what she meant. This tarot reader was always very accurate, because she had already told me what my children would be like. She claimed they were very white. And she confused the boy with the girl, because they looked so similar, according to the tarot reading. When my children were born, it turned out they did look a lot like me in their physical appearance. Although the girl looked somewhat like her father at first, as she grew up, she looked more and more like me. From what I understand, they, my two children, decided to come down with me, to live this life, here. They expressly wanted to come down, to accompany me to live this life. That was a fact, which the tarot reader also reaffirmed, when she told me, they came down to accompany you. Americo Living Trail, 347, 347. Chronicle of the Pilgrimage, the Villa Zocalo. In the morning, before starting our journey, considering the delicacy of the situation, and how easy it is for anyone, in our human part, for the ego to interfere in sacred matters, I told my companions on this pilgrimage, that we were not going to Tlatelolco to take possession of something, because no one, not even my wife, was destined to be Empress of Mexico, because that La Misión es la orden, which it is simply, to put order. Then add, from what I understand, La Imperatriz Mexico has to return, and this energy we absorb through Mexico's feminine root is simply preserved, until the moment arrives. There were 9 of us who made the journey, starting from the place, where I did my retreat. It's true that according to legend, the Quetzalcoatls came from the north, Aztlan, to liberate the Mexican people. And at least we entered through the north of Mexico City, from Ecatepec, state of Mexico. Indeed, our group met at the exit of the Potrero metro station, and then we walked towards the corner of Victoria Street, because I had in mind the biblical passage that says, "It was a white horse, and he who sat on it had a bow. A crown was given to him, and he went out conquering and perfecting his victory." Revelation chapter 6 verse 2. Then we continued along Real Del Monte Street, and turned onto Prueba Street. I showed them the place, where I spent more than a year of my retreat. We crossed Fundador de Monterrey Street, walked through Maria Luisa Park, and entered Rio Blanco Street, passing the restaurant where I used to eat, and the grocery store, where I bought fruits and vegetables during the last months of my retirement. Finally, we reached the street parallel to Mysterious Street, where I lived during my final days. We took Mysterious Street, and headed toward El Tepeyac, the last sacred site visited by Regina Tucher Perez, before being treacherously murdered at the sacrificial stone of Tlatelolco. The day was pleasant and the atmosphere was filled with sunshine, as he said to the brothers. This time I'm bringing the group to the place of my retreat, because to begin the series of pilgrimages, you need life, and this is the key. Without it, we would not be able to advance in this plan we begin today. Because the key basically means that there exists someone of flesh and blood representing the living path. Someone who, complying with the laws of La Sagrada Tradición initiation, completed his retreat, which lasted 40 months, at the end of which he achieved his goal, becoming a feathered serpent. Americo Living Trail, 348, 348. We approach with calm anxiety the famous villa in Tepeyac, where La Virgin Maria Guadalupe is. Catholic priest stands to celebrate Mass. There is a huge La Virgin painting of her, and we pass before her great image. There were many people and mixed emotions. But I closed my eyes, and relaxed as best I could. Then she covers me in her infinite love and telepathically grants me permission to make the pilgrimage, by walking her sacred route. We left the temple, and went up to the fountain, where devotees threw a little money to strengthen their prayers. With great respect, we dipped our hands in this water, and placed it on our foreheads and necks, as a symbol of purification before beginning our pilgrimage. From where we were, looking a little higher, we could see large stone statues with wings. They were the archangels Michael and some others who seemed to be watching over us from on high, waiting for us to ascend one day, after we had fulfilled our mission. We headed towards Tlatelolco. Walking on La Calzada Mysteries. A brother approached me, and I told him that Cuauhtémoc, the penultimate emperor of the great Tenochtitlan, knew that Mexico would be conquered around 1521, since the first held had begun in 1519. The ignorant Mexican people confused the conquerors with Quetzalcoatl, but not Cuauhtémoc. He knew well that resistance was useless, and yet he performed a great ritual, and the last place he went to was Tlatelolco. It was not a question then of defending Mexico from material conquest, but of preserving the Mexican spirit in Tlatelolco. Shortly after, she walked beside me, the smallest of my spiritual sisters in physical age, but the size of a goddess in cosmic age. Indeed, this dear sister named Angelica is a natural clairvoyant, and whenever I was near her for more than an hour, I began to perceive, not the somewhat shy young woman who moved in the dreams of a woman her age, very sensitive and concerned with the good manners inherent in someone with Libra's zodiac sign, but rather a beautiful cosmic woman, whom I deduced was herself in the fifth dimension. This had a very particular effect on me, because I venerated her, and at the same time, found myself trying to educate a simple teenager who didn't understand humanity in general, simply because she surely belongs to another planet. According to her clairvoyances, she comes from Uranus. She truly is a wonderful woman who is here to help humanity. It is fascinating, when he humbly tells us about his journeys through time worms or tunnels, to visit remote places in the universe. She felt a strong need to be with me almost the entire way on the walk to Tlatelolco. She was my Angelica, who accompanied me, and as we advanced, I considered it appropriate to share with her the most fundamental aspects of my life in this incarnation. The topic basically revolved around my days of retreat and beyond, complete with unforgettable mystical visions. Also, the reality that all who achieve a special state of light truly struggle with the evil Mara and his dark hosts, just as Gautama Buddha teaches. This is what Christians refer to as the fallen Americo Living Trail, 349 angel. But I clarified that it is love and a positive mindset that are the most powerful forces of good. We arrived at Tlatelolco, and the group looked at me, asking me where to go next. I really didn't know. So I let my intuition and my authority as a teacher take over. Suddenly, we were in front of the so-called Cuauhtémoc precinct, and through there we would enter the city of Tlatelolco. I respectfully knelt between the columns, where the main lintel of these stone arches is located, providing access to Tlatelolco, located next to the Church of La Plaza Three Cultures. My brothers humbly knelt as well before passing. The atmosphere became mystical. So I consecrated and protected each of them with my flaming sword, so that they would be protected, and could participate in the ritual we were about to perform. A ritual I had no clear idea about, since I had no physical knowledge of the sacrificial stone, where Regina and her 400 followers gave their lives on October 2, 1968. The only thing I was aware of was, that this energy was unique in thousands of years, and everything it did, would have effects similar to those of a god acting. Because the most important thing is not what a single man can do, nor even an army of thousands or millions of human beings, but rather, fundamentally, that these actions be carried out at opportune moments. It's like being in a central command office, national or global, from where it is possible, with the push of a button, to tap into special energies to destroy, or build for the good of many people and places. I was aware that it was the summer equinox and that on this day the feminine of the planet opens its door of cosmic contact, also adding the power of the great cross of Aquarius in the heavens. So what I did, was going to change the destiny of Mexico, in its relationship with the feminine. I had searched for the right woman, to succeed Regina Lariana of Mexico. But no such woman existed. I had realized the grave danger humanity was in, primarily due to the degeneration or backwardness of women on the planet. And this doesn't mean that men are highly advanced beings, but rather that the gods, primarily of the male gender, who, according to the sacred chronicles, created humanity, had a kind of contempt for the feminine. And throughout human history, this outrage only intensified. My intuition told me that the route, from Tepeyac to the Zocalo in the center of Mexico City, was the feminine part of the channel for the Kundalini to ascend through the spine of all of Mexico, and at the same time, recognizing Mexico Tenochtitlan as the navel of the world, that is, the solar plexus of Mother Earth. Tlatelolco was essential to save the womb of the eternal feminine of the planet, and give it the possibility of generating a new race. So the fundamental objective was for a woman, Queen of Mexico, to receive, at this unprecedented cosmic moment in world history, a sacred energy that would ensure the rebirth of the women of the world, not just of Mexico. Helping Mexico was incidental. The fundamental thing was to take advantage of La Gran Cruz cosmic energy of Aquarius, that was appearing in the skies, which is why we read in the Gospels Americo Living Trail, 350. The Son of Man will come with clouds, when you see the sign of the Son of Man appear in the heavens, etc. My wife was the most advanced woman in my group, and, therefore, the most optimal to receive this energy. I had decided this because I knew her personally. She was the one who accepted me as her husband, practically overnight. She welcomed 4 of my children into her own home, and all without any particular expectations. I was a teacher who could easily pass for anyone. A man without a job, in the human sense, who could easily be a crazy visionary or a true guru. All this confusion had no effect on her. Why? All of this answers a mystery that I still didn't fully understand at the time, but I had the experience of my recent relationship with an outstanding woman, who had been my retreat companion, and because of this, I knew that goddess women really exist. They are women well symbolized by the lotus found in a swamp, surrounded by mud, yet untainted and uncontaminated by all that filth. They are uncorrupted women. And there are very few of these. My new companion was like the previous one, only more mature. But that didn't mean she was the solution to my life. I had to do a lot of work for her, and yet I had the advantage of giving her direct instruction, day after day and hour after hour, living under the same roof, and sharing the common destiny. Something that wasn't possible with the rest of my disciples. This woman embodied a state of advanced consciousness so well, that she could synthesize, like a kaleidoscope, many women within herself. She wasn't perfect, and this is the mystery, that even then I couldn't fully grasp. She was a sleeping goddess, sleeping woman, La Exlazihuatl, and as Velasco Pina says, the sleeping woman must give birth to a new humanity. From my wife's multidimensional womb, La Orden's younger brothers had been born. But now it was time to make the cosmic connection, as an eventual successor to the Queen of Mexico, Regina. Because this was a unique day. This woman, my wife, was not filled with atavisms or fanaticism for some esoteric creed, some spiritual discipline, or a series of moral obligations to a specific religion. Rather, she lived in a perpetual state of love. She is love entirely, and yet she found herself in the constant reverie. Not a vulgar sleep, but the sleep of a goddess disguised as a mere mortal. For she is here like a rose, cared for since childhood by her family, and loved in general by those around her. She does not aspire to an outstanding life, not even in the spiritual realm. She accepts her work, her domestic life, and everything that, as a human being, she can receive. But now, it is necessary for her to awaken to a conscious service to humanity, so that her destiny can enter into a true process of awakened womanhood. That's why I decided that, on this day, she would be the one to become Regina's eventual successor. I was aware that she wasn't destined to become the Queen of Mexico, but only an eventual queen. Her destiny isn't limited to the Americo Living Trail. 351 responsibilities of a particular country, and yet the time had already come, and if I didn't do it, Tlatelolco would become a veritable powder keg. Nothing would remain. What happened in the tragedy of October 2, 1968, would be a far cry from what could happen if this supercosmic energy, which, due to the great cross in the sky, that was already forming, was latent on this particular day, wasn't used to decisively recover Ixtlahuatl. Higher forces were definitely moving me. We headed straight for the famous Church of Santiago. I would later learn that, according to the Toltecs, Santiago rides a white horse, built with the sacred stones of ancient Mexican temples. We washed our hands in the fountains in the outer courtyard. The church was closed, and taking a few steps to the right we directly approached the archaeological ruins where on October 2, 1968, Regina had been sacrificed by the lunatic Injustice, precisely on the Temple of Sacrifices where hundreds of years before, said Lamina would have given her life, also in this way, to pay a blood fee, which is how the moon works, to allow our people to survive temporarily. Regina had already recognized that Lamina, being Queen of Mexico at that time, was defeated by the degenerate warriors who, in their blindness, had ended up distorting the teachings of Huitzilopochtli, plunging the feminine side of this country into the deepest sleep with their ignorance. And Regina, with her sacrifice, reawakened the sacred mountain of Mexico called Ixtlahuatl. Since then, the newly awakened woman, about to give birth to the superior mental body of the new Mexican race, awaited the fruits of the current golden age. And here we were, my wife and all of us, as one, supporting her, accompanying her to these archaeological sites seemingly made of inert stone, but not dead, but perfectly alive. Although naturally, they remained silent, like mute guardians of the sacred events with which they were filled, always waiting with infinite patience for their eternal and rightful owners. But it also seemed that, somehow invisible, unwanted officials were appearing through hidden crevices. Surely, they were some chiefs, fortunately not all of them, eager to prevent this race from awakening to claim what is theirs. Perhaps the bloodthirsty warrior god Huitzilopochtli wanted to persist in avoiding the inevitable, since Regina had already been able to awaken the sleeping woman, the eternal feminine of Mexico. And it was only natural that the next step would be the possibility of breaking down the borders of our country, to transform it into the eternal feminine of America, the chosen land for the new humanity. The area was deserted, just my group and a few guards. And my wife, driven by her own heart, and by our circle of almost childlike love and trust, was compelled by a higher power, to move towards that sacred place, the temple of sacrifice trodden by Sid Lamina and Regina, in unique cosmic moments. Officially, we could say, that we stormed the place. But in reality, we didn't do anything wrong. Americo Living Trail, 352. 352. She hesitated for a moment, already on the other side of the fence that protects and preserves these archaeological ruins, and the guard who was nearby began to shout desperately at her, "Do not go up there, on the site of the sacrificial stone, because the anthropologist will get angry." But we all encouraged him firmly, shouting almost in unison, "Runs!" and she obeyed, heading quickly toward the sacred stone. While we stood, almost clawing at the protective bar with nerves, her long, multicolored, flowery dress seemed to flow toward the temple of sacrifices. When she reached the foot of it, she turned to look at us from afar. And we shouted back, almost in unison, "Get up!" And she ascended towards the round stone surface. I watched her climb the steps, but I never told her that, when she reached the top of the shrine, she should stand in the center and then kneel, reverently and resolutely at the same time. However, she did so, and it surprised me, and filled me with indescribable joy. She moved, invested with a superior power, through this place, her colorful dress caressed by the wind. She knelt devoutly in the center of the circular stone, about 4 or 5 meters in diameter. Then, a blinding light, invisible to everyone, gathered all its power from this clear sky filled with white clouds, and gave way to an energy that surely came from beyond our planet. In the fraction of a second, that light concentrated on her entire fragile and insignificant physical body, which lay prostrate with its face bowed reverently. It penetrated her completely with the blinding ray, in such a way that she absorbed all this energy from infinity. The light of a powerful ray, in a second, remained concentrated in her forever. He was wearing his golden cloak. Then a large, yellow butterfly, speckled with black stripes, began to flutter all over the place. Later I learned that La Mariposate is the fundamental symbol of Mexican culture, and represents the feminine of the eagle. My wife came down from the temple, and headed towards us. Thus was fulfilled what is said La Biblia. But the 2 wings of the great eagle were given to the woman. Revelation 12. This is because in the days following this event, I heard that this biblical passage had been fulfilled at that moment. Then I read the entire chapter 12 of Revelation, and I found the similarity between what happened and what is written in that part of the Bible astonishing. Americo Living Trail, 353. 353. When she came down from the temple, and headed toward us, while the security guard, all confused, rushed to get a policeman, who just stood there staring at us, and wandering around without knowing what to demand of us. My students looked at me to see what was next, but what else could I do? The only thing I did, even before she finished being with us, was that I began walking toward the back of the church, because I respected these things. And then, I sat on the other side of the outside of the Church of Santiago, so that the official authority would see that we no longer intended to jump into the archaeological zone. Meanwhile, I couldn't get over my admiration because, in addition, the butterfly continued chattering happily all over the place. I remained thoughtful for a few moments, and then said to my friends, "Did you know that in ancient times there was La Escuela Temple La Mujer Mariposa? It was a women's temple where women studied and were trained. That needs to be revived in Tlatelolco." They listened to me and remained silent. For a moment, we were happy, while both the police and the guards looked at us with distrust and bewilderment. We left with a sense of accomplishment. I wanted to continue the route I had planned for myself at this moment. If necessary, I would travel it alone from now on. But, despite my offers, none of my companions wanted to take any transport. They had actually decided to follow me to the end on this small, yet significant, pilgrimage. On the avenue where Calzada de Guadalupe and Calzada Mysterious meet, the guardian of Tlatelolco, Kitlahuac, seemed happy, and I thought his stone statue looked bigger than usual. I began this part of the path, which, in my humble understanding, refers to the Antacarana Bridge of Mexico. That bridge, located at the nape of the neck in the human body, is where, according to occultists, the initiate makes contact from the lower self, or lower mind, to the higher self or higher mind. The city's higher mental body waited anxiously, and in patient silence for its awakening, its activation. We continued walking straight past Mysterious on what is now called Reforma Avenue, and I immediately found the statue of Simón Bolívar, the famous liberator of America, riding his tireless horse. I remembered that, according to the metaphysics directed by the enigmatic ascended masters, it teaches that Saint Germain is the reincarnation of Simón Bolívar. A few days later, something very real but silent made me understand. On the Antacarana Bridge in Mexico, Saint Germain becomes the avatar of the planet and Americo of America. We quickly reached the metro, underground public transport, at its Hidalgo station on Reforma Avenue. We saluted the La Virgen statue, which was reportedly discovered in June 1997. It was formed naturally by the flow of water hitting the stone. It's the figure of a virgin that can be contemplated in a small temple built at the entrance to the metro. I found it very interesting that, just as Hidalgo took the Americo Living Trail, 354 banner on La Virgen September 16, 1810, Hidalgo and the Virgin of Guadalupe are now clearly linked here. Our pilgrimage also began at Tepeyac. I firmly believed that this was precisely the place where the Antacarana Bridge was covered. Truly, Queen Regina left us, as her successors, the table set, so that such heirs could act at the precise cosmic and human moment. We all knelt before the small shrine at the entrance to the Hidalgo metro station, and so did my traveling companion. She stood before the image of the Virgin of Hidalgo, and as they say, she did so in the heart of the tumult, as people continued with their ordinary lives, moving here and there, entering and exiting the metro, or simply rushing through this place. Trying to attend to their own affairs, they flowed like a river seeking its course. But the priestess of the golden yellow ray was there, unseen by anyone. How is that possible? I, who had understood something of the feminine mystery, had to pause to acknowledge her. Who was she as a person, and as a feminine consecrated to a higher mission? It no longer mattered what happened, even in our human relationship, as a couple united in marriage. She had begun the journey back to her spiritual home. We had fasted more intensely the day before, or perhaps more than a day before. Now it was well past noon, and we were hungry, so we happily went to buy some orange juice. The owner who served us was happy, though he didn't know why. He started giving everyone in our group extra orange juice, as if it were water and not juice. He seemed to know something very good had happened just a few steps away from his juice stand. We were all laughing and joking. Once revived, I wanted to make the entire trip to the intersection of Reforma and Avena de Juarez, the Sechumna, the central section where Cadalini rises. My wife was with me, but the others were distracted for a moment, and I didn't want to pressure them. So they cut back a little early to take Avena de Juarez. We all gathered to walk together on Juarez, the throat of Mexico, on one side of the Alameda, and from there to 5 de Mayo, as Regina does, and then, directly towards the Zocalo, entering towards the center of the Plaza de la Constitucion, where the flagpole is located, walking towards the center of it, not directly, but in a spiral shape. A light rain greeted us. From here, the city was bathed with this water of Aquarius. I had already told my students that Maestro Estrada said that when something went well, a special drizzle would fall upon the place, because it was the water of the water-bearer, known as Aquarius. Thus ends this first pilgrimage. A few days later, on July 9th, I heard on the news that protesters had gathered in the Plaza of the Three Cultures, just a few steps from the sacrificial stone, arriving with 100 hijacked trucks, and then heading toward the Zocalo. But Americo Living Trail, 355, 355. The most interesting thing was that as they advanced toward the capital Zocalo, a torrential downpour broke out, but they relented, and practically everyone arrived at the Plaza de la Constitucion soaked. In view of these events, I couldn't help but recall the prophecy her Tibetan masters made to Regina, so that she could fulfill her mission in the famous land of the Eagles, Mexico. They warned her, the rain will purify the good and the bad. That's precisely what Regina experiences at the beginning of the Great Marches, where thousands of students ended up soaked. And now, on the threshold of Los Angeles, Son of Man, history repeats itself once again. Second Pilgrimage. Zimbabwe, Saturday, July 17, 1999. Background. The date of July 22 was approaching, when we know horoscopically, that the sun enters the sign of Leo. Therefore, I understood that the moon, ruler of the sign of Cancer, although still present, was tending to lose its magnetic force, and the sun was rising with great power and glory, especially due to the presence of the sign of the Son of Man. Therefore, it was necessary to take full advantage of this opportunity. I had to go with my wife, to visit the place where Master Dr. Jose Manuel Estrada held his 40-month retreat. My intuition told me that now the apostolic succession from master to disciple had to be consolidated. I was aware that in these matters, the majority, the moon, doesn't understand the hidden meaning. As a mere human, I wouldn't understand such special situations if it weren't for the training I'd had. That's why I found myself alone, but never again, for the masters were and are always with me. Although this time everything was perfect silence, Almeric Scorpion. I didn't invite my students on this trip, because I felt it was something I should do alone, just my wife and me. That is because she is so closely tied to my path. Americo Living Trail, 356. 356. That's why I told the students that this time I would have to go with just my wife, since Scorpio refers to intimacy, and that perhaps another time we would go as a group. Indeed, controlling this energy requires great discretion, prudence, and a special inner fulfillment. In reality, I thought that, just as to begin the pilgrimages within Mexico City, I had to ask permission from the Virgin Mary in La Villa, the Basilica. In the same way, to travel through the Aquarius Cross within the Mexican Republic, I had to ask permission from my teacher Estrada. Through a painful process, that I cannot call physical pain, but rather mental pain, I had recognized the faults committed by my royal master, Master Estrada, who, although a disciple of Master de la Ferrier, had not aligned himself with his fundamental orders. Especially the one referring to his withdrawal from the mission, and dressing in civilian clothes, as Master de la Ferrier himself had done, when he left America. Estrada, despite his integrity, had been too tolerant with his disciples to the point that many of them were not prepared to la jerarquia, literally following Master Estrada as a leader, rather than as a living symbol. Most of them only theoretically recognized La Superiority Master of La Ferrier. In my retreat I meditated a lot regarding the matters that endangered the succession of the sacred initiatic tradition, and I was prepared by the same sublime elder brother, Estrada, who, dissatisfied with these dealings of the hierarchy, returned from his grave, as if to say, after 3 days of being dead and buried, to rebuild the temple, the Templars, and recover time in the eternal present consciousness. He secretly prepared me, by putting me on the path to enlightenment, and, shortly before, he gave me the apostolic succession in a direct vision. Shortly after leaving my own retreat, Master de la Ferrier, in a conscious journey on the internal planes, confirmed this succession. I'm ashamed to say it, because I feel too small for this matter, but I'm loyal to the masters and their work. Above all, because I love it naturally, and it fits me like a glove. My heart tells me that the sublime older brother, Master Estrada, is returning to Zimbabwe, Saturday the 17th of July 1999. Trying to be as discreet as possible, I decided to head with my wife to Zimbabwe, in order to cover the eastern part of Mexico, related in the Aquarius Cross to the sign of Scorpio, whose key is, to be silent, to keep quiet, and also, to desire. Americo Living Trail, 357. 357. We arrived at the bus station, within the Federal District, and the electronic sign displayed the date July 17, 1999 in red. The place is called Tapo, so I understand it's a secret. Furthermore, the metro, public transportation system, Exit is the Sendero station, he who rose from the dead, also alluding to the Scorpion Eagle. My wife has managed to maintain a calm mood, despite the bus's departure being 3 hours late compared to what was scheduled. Before reaching Jalapa, the capital of the state of Veracruz, we have to cross a dense fog, which, like a ghostly monster, seems to devour the road. It's a Maya, the symbol of the illusions of the world of desires, Scorpion, which every candidate must overcome, before finding the true path. It's like a barrier that subtly seeks to prevent the fate of the truck we've boarded. During the trip, we watch an alien film starring a cetacean named Kiko. At the end of the film, the alien says, "Before brotherhood was found in bodies, it was already found in God." They showed the second film. It was a version of an Indian whose spirit, body and all, merges with the forest, like the ascended ones, becoming the spirit of the forest, and assimilating the bear, the eagle, and the wolf into their invisible human entity. We passed by the edge of the town called La Gloria, where my wife has her roots, since my mother-in-law is originally from that place. Naturally, we continued on, heading for Jalapa, which is a little further east. We arrived in Jalapa without incident, taking the taxi to Zimpazapua. We drove through the town of Cotepec, snakes, as if we were heading for the town of Zico, which means navel of the world, remembering that this country is called Mexico. Before reaching Zico, we cut left, and entered the town of Zimpazapua. The weather was humid, and it had rained heavily in Veracruz. We asked the taxi driver if he knew of any hotels in the town. He nodded, and, to our surprise, took us directly to La Hacienda Zimpazapua, dropping us off at the reception door. The former hacienda was now a ghost house, a kind of inn for tourists. This was precisely the place we wanted to reach. It wasn't stopping, though less heavily. The receptionist didn't have rooms available for 2 people, but only for more than 2. But we waited a bit, and, without losing our composure, she said to the only bellboy, "Why don't we give you room 8? The porter didn't respond, but she listened attentively, and handed us the form to fill out with our personal information. The bellboy led us to a room, and I was greatly surprised to discover that above the horizontal frame of the entrance door was the sign of Scorpio, accurately symbolized. I gestured to my wife, pointing it out with restrained excitement, for I knew that, through Veracruz, one enters the Mexican Republic from the east to the Americo Living Trail, 358 west, and that as far as I could see, the entire country is ruled by Scorpio. This sign governs the most secret arm within the Aquarian cross, represented by 4 signs. As we were just entering the room and our server was about to leave, I took the opportunity to ask him if this was where Big Brother had been. Master Estrada. Yes, his enclosure is right next to this room. We took a quick swim to wash off the tiredness of the trip. It was already getting late, and we had to make the most of it without giving up on having fun. Since we were hungry, we decided to head out to the restaurant inside the hacienda itself. As we walked through the ranch, we practically stumbled upon a room similar to ours, but with its doors open, to our left. We peeked inside, and found it was the sanctuary, where the Sublime Elder Brother held his daily ceremony during his sacred 40-month retreat. I later learned that he not only lived here but also used the current guest room number 4. Like children, we tried to agree on whether to eat material food or enter, driven by our mysticism to first partake of spiritual food. We opted to enter, and then I received another great and shocking surprise, which confronted my emotions with mixed feelings, those of the Uranian kind, that is, the unexpected. The Elder of the World Ashram of Cotepec, Veracruz, ashram means, place where a master lives with his disciples, had brought some people to visit this sacred precinct. Both the elder, the honorific title of the main caretaker of an ashram, and I looked into each other's eyes, and he wanted to say something to me, but we were both petrified with surprise. He most likely recognized me, although he couldn't place me, since in the past we were friends, and I had the close relationship with my first companion, the mother of my children. It was as if he thought I was dead, for the order of Aquarius to which he belongs and I wasn't. Perhaps more than 6 years had passed without seeing each other. She looked in astonishment at my current companion, because she was no longer the woman with whom I had children, nor my retreat partner, but now another. And at the same time, as all this exploded in her human mind, she also wanted to check, perhaps, my current rank in the SOAR, Supreme Order of Aquarius, because she quickly searched my chest with her scrutinizing eyes, to see what cross I was carrying. And then enter, to see if she was from the Aquarian family. My very intuitive wife sensed something strange in all this. She understood what the elder was doing so much, that she began to look for her cross of Lord and dead lesser brothers, and she said to me, trying to be discreet, but not quite succeeding, "I'm missing my cross, I don't have it, let's go," and we left the place. Americo Living Trail, 359, 359. We walked about 20 steps, and entered our room, and there he found her. My mind struggled with strange and disturbing memories. When we returned to the temple, the elder had vanished like a dream, and we didn't see him again during our stay there. Once again in the sanctuary, I knelt with my forehead on the floor, between the columns that Master of Masters, Estrada used to perform his ceremony each morning. Unpleasant feelings were still struggling within me, recalling the bitter parts of my past life within the great universal fraternity, the Solar Line. I remembered things I had to do, such as changing my name to a pseudonym. I was doing this, when a voice resonated within me. Don't have compassion for them, because they won't have compassion for you. I tried to recover quickly, I wasn't about to ruin this trip. Then the voice inside me spoke again. The succession contact has already been made. After the ceremony, we moved to the rustic restaurant, and enjoyed an exquisite meal, truly unforgettable, as it was charged with the energy of the very place that surrounded us. It was getting dark, when we returned to our room, and had intimate relations, but truly intimate, especially because this time I could experience the closeness of her missioning with me, without her work being an obstacle. It was something I hadn't been able to experience before, except for our visits to the ashram in Hidalgo, but even so, it wasn't the same. The next morning I got up, as usual, very early, before dawn, to meditate and do some exercises. Then she woke up, and did some exercises too. While we were taking a hot bath, in a huge and peculiar tub or jacuzzi, my wife said to me, I had a very special dream. I was with people from different spiritual groups, and they all displayed, through their clothing and accessories, the spiritual current they belonged to. So, I began to look around my neck for an image, to show them who I was, because some of them were asking me to show them the symbol of Christ. I realized that they all had some symbol to show them, and I didn't. But then I realized that I myself was the living symbol. So I told them, I'm the living symbol, I carry it within myself. I listened with great interest to my traveling companion's talk, as she reaffirmed what we were doing here, and I had already reflected, that the Mexican myth had something to do with my recent internal experiences. Huitzilopochtli was born in Coatepec. And the elder of the Coatepec ashram seemed to me an appropriate representative of the 400 Surianas, who, according to Aztec mythology, were defeated by Huitzilopochtli, the incarnation of the solar Americo Living Trail, 360, 360, initiate, whom they wanted to kill. But as soon as he was born, he eliminated them in a single battle. It wasn't something personal against the elder, the masters, or the brothers of Lajifu. Solar. It was simply that humanity's state of unconsciousness still held wounds I hadn't been able to acknowledge. I was restless, and subtle resentments tried to assault my mind. Then a pleasant presence, that of Lady Mercedes, made herself felt. I was thinking of her, and she said to me telepathically, love them and that's it. It was Sunday and he wanted to give a present to Major Alcantara, but he didn't know if he was still alive or not. In the morning we went out to visit the shrine. I felt inspired to protect it with a simple ritual, walking around the room in a circle 3 times, and revering the ash image drawn on one of the walls, representing the sublime elder brother, Estrada, and also before his photographs. I remembered the previous and only time I visited this place, when I still belonged to the GFU, and in the same room Reverend Carlota Estrada's widow told us how that image on the wall was formed. Master Estrada told our son Joselito to clean the wall, which was stained with ash due to the smoking of the sacred fire. The boy obeyed, but as he tried to remove the ash, he smeared it more and more. Suddenly, he stopped to call out to the master, his father, because what formed that ash stain was actually the exact image of Master Estrada, holding his beloved wooden ceremonial briefcase. The image was perfect, so they decided to leave it. There were still traces of that image. I also remember that on that same day, Reverend Carlotta told us about this retreat of her recently deceased husband, Maestro Estrada. Also present here was Reverend Shea Mitchin, who told us how he had given his Maestro Estrada the land that now serves as ashram of Coatepec. All of this was also present within me, in those transcendent, mystical, and joyful moments. Meanwhile, my wife was offering her personal prayer in front of the columns. We walked around the place and there were reeds here, so symbolic in the history of Quetzalcoatl. Then I understood the movie I had seen about the Indian, who had merged with the forest, to take care of it. Although Jose Manuel Estrada hadn't reached the ascension, I thought he had nonetheless merged with the world, and especially with this place, becoming the spirit of the Hacienda de Zimpizahua. He was ascended without being so. Americo Living Trail, 361. I had met him physically, and he gave me his blessing 3 times, one of them precisely in the ashram of Coatepec, which is why I could tell he was all over this place. While we were having lunch at the restaurant, I asked the gentleman who had carried our small luggage to a room the day before, where Major Alcantara, owner of these lands, was staying, why I wanted to give him a small gift. He informed me that the Major had been dead for 13 years, but that the gift I wanted to give him could be given to his eldest son, also named Alcantara. He informed us that Joe Queen Jr. was attending Mass with his wife at the town church, but that he would be back soon, and would let him know we were expecting him. Alcantara Jr. arrived and approached us to greet us. Seeing him, my wife and I felt relaxed, for his face inspired friendship, thanks to his kind and brotherly gesture. Smiling, he said, "Keep eating. Did you want to talk to me? You'd better finish eating slowly. I'll be right here waiting for you." After lunch, with our backpacks on our shoulders, we said goodbye to our room. As we left, we saw Brother in the distance as he walked along a path parallel to ours. This reminded me of the sign of Aquarius, which is drawn with 2 lines parallel to each other. I signaled to him to meet up later. The sun was pleasant, and the entire forest harmonized with the birdsong. A peace emanated throughout the place. As a gift of gratitude, we presented him with a volume of Christian line. He gazed with emotion at the photos of Maestros Estrada, and De La Ferrier on the cover and read aloud the Gospel of the New Age. I told him that the title referred to the lives of the Masters. I also gave him Circular 15, telling him that these were events to come during the upcoming total solar eclipse, on August 11, 1999, the last eclipse of the century. I explained to him that the Son of Man was appearing in the sky Los Angeles, and that was why these were special times. I commented that I had a mission that I was fulfilling. Then, he looked at me with astonishment and subtle annoyance, and explained that we all have a mission, but only Maestro Estrada is the master. He told us that the Maestro told them that even the drunkard had a mission to fulfill, but that even that drunkard taught us that we shouldn't be drunkards. That was the drunkard's mission. Americo Living Trail, 362. I didn't want to be imprudent, and accepted his lessons. However, I realized that I didn't, and couldn't accept a lofty mission from anyone other than Master Estrada. Not for now, because his teacher was truly Master Estrada. I had lived with him for several years. In physical life, Brother Alcantara was truly the living expression of the sublime elder brother. He remembered him, and spoke of him fondly, later confessing to us that he had left Coatepec and the solar line, because the Marcellus blood children of the main leader of the Order of Aquarius for the solar line and first disciple of Master Estrada, denigrated his father, Major Alcantara, in their books. This brother lived in uncertainty like many others, unable to understand why people trained by Maestro Estrada could do such things. I understood his feelings, and, to restore his confidence, I let him know that there were good people among them. Brother Alcantara's face lit up. "Do you believe it?" "Of course," I replied. She asked for our address, and I introduced her as my wife. She liked that very much, and we continued talking more intimately. My wife asked him about Carlota Castaneda, Estrada's widow. She really wanted to know if she was still alive, as she hadn't had the chance to meet her in person. The brother told her he was about to arrive from the United States to Coatepec,